Okay, so this one's kind of a current event, but you don't have to like redo it. We're going to make an application to the current event. So there's a trend on TikTok called the dupe trend. I've done so many essays about quality, over, do we buy something just because it's expensive, or do we buy it because it's good quality? And sometimes it's both. But I think what this is really about is kids at school, and your parents are guilty of it too. We buy products that other people promote. Let me give you the perfect example. Apple. Okay. So in 2007, Apple created smartphone technology. So what's great about that is Apple really kind of created the industry. They created their own name. Does that mean that Google and Samsung phones aren't as good? Not necessarily, right? They're pretty good phones. They're really good technology. But what do most kids at school want? Why? It's that brand, and that brand has status, doesn't it? Right? So can you think of other brands at school that you recognize boys and girls are wearing right now?
My dad,
Okay, what else?
um, like different, they're like expensive clothes companies.
Okay, so here's what your peers came up with. Nike, hello. Um, Most kids, girls and boys, have a little Nike swoosh, right? A couple of brands that are new and upcoming. Viore, it's a brand of sweatpants. They're really kind of thin and soft, and they're about $100. So here's my question: do you need $100 pair of sweatpants? So that's one of those that on TikTok they would explain, you don't need $100 pair of sweatpants. You can get a dupe, DUPE, dupe meaning a duplicate. And what they called them in my day was a knockoff. So they've been around a long, long time. If something wasn't a brand name, people called it a knockoff. Today on TikTok, they call it a dupe. Are you familiar with Ugg boots? They're those fur-lined boots from Australia. Really, really warm on your feet, but they're $100, right? So a lot of parents are like, I'm not paying $100 for a pair of boots that you're going to grow out of, right? Especially if you're still growing. No way I'm going to get a knockoff. So do you understand why parents, especially when you're still growing, refuse to pay those prices? I remember telling my daughter the same. I was like, when you stop growing like your foot, we'll talk about investing in shoes. But until that time, I really wasn't buying expensive shoes. So it's really interesting. I talked to my boys this week and I said, okay, Nike's a pretty big deal. And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, so what is the price point that your parents are willing to pay for a pair of sneakers? And all of them, for the most part, were between 75 and 125. And I was like, what? Your parents are willing to spend that much on a tennis shoe? And the resounding yes was because of sports. Yes, they will invest in it if it's for sports. And I was like, aha, right? Will they also invest in sports equipment? Right? So what sport do you play?
I play tennis.
You just fell right into my hands here, girl. So how much is a really good tennis racket?
It's like $125.
And that's a low lying tennis racket. They go up to thousands, right? Right? So why are parents willing to spend that much? Because they look at it as an investment and they want you to be, you know, proficient. They want you to be as good as you can be in that sport. So they're willing to invest in that. Crocs. Uh-huh. Do you know what made Crocs so popular? The pandemic. Uh-huh. Yeah. Crocs were super popular about 15 years ago, and then they went, nobody bought them. And then when everybody was home during the pandemic, they went shot right up in sales. I think that's so interesting how trends come and go, right? Even trends from when I was your age. Slides. Do you know what slides are? Okay, they're those little like flip-flops, but they have like a horizontal strap, and boys wear them with socks, right? Explain that to me. So I found out something interesting this week from my boys, and I said, okay, can you explain to me this fashion trend where boys have to wear even knee-high socks or mid calf socks with slides, with little sandals? And they're like, we don't like the way our toes look. And I went, oh, you mean you wear socks for vanity reasons? And they're like, yeah. I was like, good to know. I honestly didn't know. My employee was like, huh, wow. So interesting. Sports jerseys. All my boys this week: Nike, Fila, Adidas, Under Armour. I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 of them had some kind of sports shirt on because they feel kind of masculine. They feel kind of manly and sporty, right? Do girls care about that? A little bit. Apparently Nike, #1 brand for females and males for both apparel and shoes, right? But I don't think girls care as much as boys do about having a sports logo on a shirt. Would you agree? Right. I mean, I think we're okay with just a knockoff shirt. Teva and Chacos. Tevas they're the little Velcro sandals that you can wear in the water. I have a pair. I garden with them and I walk my dogs with them because they're like Crocs, but they don't come off. So when you swim in the ocean or you swim in the lake, they're awesome because you don't want to touch the bottom with your feet, right? So they're really lightweight. They kind of have this foam bottom with these little Velcro straps. So I love them. So in the summer, you might see those. Okay, I know you know this name. I know you know it. Lululemon. Oh, how much are Lululemon yoga leggings?
I don't really go to there, but I think it's expensive.
$100. $100. So a lot of parents, how do you think your parents feel about that? Would they buy you or Pratika a pair of $100 leggings? Does Pratika have a pair?
No.
So they won't pay that. Okay. Does Pratika wear leggings?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing she wears a dupe, right? A duplicate, a knockoff. And then Canada Goose is another brand. Canada Goose is the warmest winter coat you can buy. They start at $1,000. And the reason they're so expensive is they are literally filled with Canada Goose down feathers. So feathers from a goose, which are really, really soft, really, really warm. Okay. They are the warmest jacket out there. Do we need that in Texas? Okay. So you and I are fine with a knockoff jacket, right? And we just got through winter. Were kids wearing a certain brand of winter coat or did they care?
Some of them did care and they wore, but some of them didn't.
So was it like North Face and certain brands?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Again, are we pretty brand conscious at your school? Okay. That's the culture we live in. I think your parents are equally guilty of caving in to the pressure of branding. I'm pretty sure your parents have Apple, right? All these Teslas out there, great car. And yes, it's an electric car. You don't need $150,000 electric car. You can buy a $25,000 electric car. What is that about? Branding. It's about status, right? It's about being seen in that really nice, exclusive luxury car. And a lot of people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area have Teslas. I've never seen so many Teslas, right? Okay. I talked to a lot of people today. Are you familiar with a KitchenAid mixer?
I know KitchenAid, but is it? Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So a KitchenAid mixer is a very, very expensive. I'm gonna see if I can put it on my phone for you. Do it real quick. Okay, so it looks like this. Does that look familiar? Do you have one of those?
No, but my mom's planning to buy one.
That's a $400 mixer. I have never had one until the pandemic. We laughingly said, we're baking so much every day. Let's get a mixer. So I promise you, we used that thing like crazy. Now it kind of sits there, but it's awesome. It's awesome. If you cook every day, probably like your mom, or you bake a lot, that's an investment. That's actually something you're going to use over time. So we're going to talk about that. You know, this dupe trend makes fun of kids that are stuck on labels. Well, we're all kind of stuck on labels, adults and kids alike, right? So let's go through just a couple things here. The 19 best clothing stores. And I want to share with you something. Are you ready? All of these are dupes. Every single store is a duplicate. So how are fashion trends set? On the runway. They are set in Milan, in Paris, and New York City when the top designers have fashion shows. And then they show their new designs, and all of these other companies come in and copycat them, right? So H&M, great, reasonably priced store, very trendy store. Remember, I'm wearing an H&M skirt. Oh, go figure. And this H&M skirt, I think it cost me $29.99. No joke. Not the highest quality fabric, but you know, it is what it is. It's a duplicate. Francesca's, duplicate. Urban Outfitters, male and female store, duplicate. Lulu's, duplicate. Abercrombie and Fitch, duplicate. They put their label on it, but they copied Ralph Lauren. Berkshire from Zara, duplicate. Old Navy, definitely copycat. Lululemon. Okay, first of all, they have a yoga brand of clothing. It is a fantastic brand of clothing. It is not a duplicate. They're kind of like Under Armour. They kind of had their own technology, their own fabric that they designed. And so theirs is kind of a new technology. Now, I'll tell you a little thing about Lululemon. My daughter is a yoga instructor. Not only is she a yoga instructor, she's a trainer for all of the yoga teachers in training in New York City for 15 Manhattan studios. She has 30 pair of Lululemon leggings. No joke. Okay, but you and I can look at that and go, but that's her job. We can understand that. And I'll tell you something about those leggings. When that's your job and you've been doing this for 5 years, my daughter will tell you they wash well. They don't fade. They keep their shape. They don't fall down like a lot of other pants. And they stand the test of time. So yes, they're $100 pants, but they last longer. So we can justify these prices when it's our job. So, you know, the mixer, your mom cooks all the time. By the way, you can tell her she deserves a mixer. You know, come on, we're moms. We cook every day. We deserve a mixer and we're going to use it, right? So it's really interesting. I could justify certain products, especially expensive products, when they make sense. The Gap, duplicate. American Eagle Outfitters, duplicate. ASOS, seriously duplicate. Cotton On, Target, all duplicates. Free People Reformation, higher priced, duplicates. Zara, definitely duplicate. It's like an H&M. Aeropostale, duplicate. PacSun and BaubleBar. Okay, so here's the thing. we can't afford Christian Dior. We can't afford Gucci. We can't afford Prada. So we go to these cool stores, right? Thinking we're all hip and cool wearing their brand when we are actually wearing a dupe, right? It's just the level of the dupe that we're wearing. So I find that fascinating. I'm going to go to this athletic teen apparel survey. Here's what they found. Nike has still remained the dominant favorite apparel and footwear for boys and girls. Number one in the market. Wow, they're doing something right. Number two in the market, American Eagle. Number three, Lululemon. Number four, H&M. Number five, Adidas. Number six, PacSun. I think you get the point. Okay, so not only do we have duplicates, we have certain stores that are trendy, right? In my day, Abercrombie and Fitch, oh my gosh, they did this really offensive promotion, and they would have young teenage men shirtless in their stores. Not kidding you. And they would be in the mall, and girls would go to the store to see the shirtless teenage guy. And I was like, that is not okay. They were like the most popular store. They don't have that level of popularity. They got rid of the ads because the ads were offensive. But it's really fascinating to me how kids buy into these trends. Okay, so if you go to page 8, the last page, it says items kids buy that are less expensive and knockoffs. So I had an interesting conversation this week, and I said, okay, what are some things that you don't mind buying a duplicate of? Like, you really don't care if anybody sees you not having a labeled item. So a couple things were, number one was headphones. A lot of my kids said they didn't care about AirPods. And I was like, interesting, because that's a pretty popular item, right? They're like, you know what? Especially the younger ones. They're like, my parents are worried that I'll break them or lose them or someone will steal them. And I go, those are valid concerns. Is a $15 pair of little wired earbuds just fine for what you need at school? Right. Do you need a $200 or $300 pair of AirPods? No. So that's definitely one of those things that it's not essential. It's nice. Not going to lie to you. I like mine too. But I don't have to have them. Okay. T-shirts. I love Gap t-shirts. They're the softest t-shirts, like a basic white or black t-shirt. I don't have to have certain brands or logos. Some people do. Underwear, socks, pajamas. How many people see us in these things, right? So a lot of people have no problem buying lower quality of that. Backpacks was one that a lot of kids talked about this week. I was like, so why do you not care if you have a brand name backpack? And they're like, I just stick it in my cubby. I mean, why? It doesn't matter. Nobody sees me with it. And I was telling them the story about my daughter. I was going to buy her an expensive backpack for New York City. She's like, no, Mom, I don't want to draw attention to myself. In New York City, someone's going to rip that off my back and mug me and steal it. And I was like, good point. Good point. Cheap backpack it is, right? So it's kind of, so do you know of a brand of backpack that kids are using at your school?
Most of them are using Adidas and Nike.
Interesting. Items that kids buy that have to be the best quality. Tennis shoes. That was number one for my students. They really care about tennis shoes. Now, I get it if it's sports. Again, Nike, Adidas, Hoka, Vans, Converse. I get it. Especially if you play sports, right? Sports equipment was something that they had to have the best quality. Jewelry, ironically, was something. I think that's an Indian thing with gold jewelry. Yes. Is that right? And then there's a new trend. I learned something new this week via Mania. Have you heard about permanent bracelets? So they're literally permanent. There's no hook to take them on and off. They're usually gold, real gold, and they're permanent. And I was like, that would drive me nuts. I'd want to take it off, right? I can't do it. So that's a really cool trend. So obviously you want something expensive because it's going to leave a mark if it's, like a cheap bracelet. Leggings, Lululemon. Girls have to have these. Am I right? Like it is like a hot brand right now. Apple technology, pretty much anything Apple. Purses. Just curious, what kind of purse does your mom have?
My mom has Coach.
Got a lot of Louis Vuittons this week. And I was like, your mama's like expensive handbags. Okay, to be fair to your mama, she wears that handbag every day, right? Right? Crocs. Kids don't want a knockoff. They want the Crocs. Fair. I mean, they're only $30 anyway. I think that's fair. North Face. Certain sweatpants. They want a brand name. Here's an interesting one. I had my boys come in with their glasses and they had Oakley and Nike. And I was like, wait. Why do you need expensive frames? And they're like, well, what do you mean, Miss Hensel? And I was like, why do you need Oakley and Nike? And why do you need those expensive brands? They're just glasses. Who cares? They're like, oh, Miss Hensel, we wear our glasses every day. And I go, so you have to have the best quality frame. Yes. Okay, fair. So let's go to your outline. So it's really interesting. Do you think that your peers or your parents influence you more with brands?
Probably peers.
And you can ask your older sister. The older you get, the more your peers influence you. So we know that they're actually influencers on social media. So I think this is making it even harder for you to say no and realize you don't have to have all of these expensive things. And it gets really expensive. So because of the access to the internet and social media, children and teens today are well aware of popular brands. I mean, I don't think you missed a single one today. I think you knew them all. There's so much attention on trends in schools. Some groups of kids are more than willing to spend money on high price items, and their parents are willing to buy. Somebody this week told me that one kid at their class had 5 pair of AirPods. I go, why do you need 5? I have 1. I don't need 5, right? My high school student, so I told my students, I go, okay, Coppell High School parking lot. So I asked him, I said, what kind of cars do you think they drive? And my employees said, well, we have Teslas and Lexus and Jeep. And I go, a 16, 17, and 18-year-old are driving these cars and parking them at the high school. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, wow. So 2 reasons. Kids want to purchase high-priced and better quality because they're more attractive. And they fit in. They feel like they're part of this elite, affluent school. Coppell, Southlake, very affluent school districts, right? So you feel like you have to drive these cars to fit in. There are those, like my employee, she's like, Miss Hensel, where do you go from there? Like, they're going to expect this kind of car their whole life. And I go, yeah, that's called entitlement. And she's like, I don't need a car like that. I go, I drive a Nissan. You're preaching to the choir, girl. I said, I drive a Nissan Armada. It's an SUV. It's a nice car. I'm not saying I wouldn't say no to a Tesla, but I don't need a Tesla, right? But I get why people would want one, but it is kind of a status symbol. So when it comes to purchasing trendy items today, kids and teens are influenced by their peers and their parents. And when I say parents, I mean parents can sometimes buy into it too. They want you to have the best so that you fit in at school and you're popular and cool. Or they are like, I'm not spending that money on you. You're not getting a $100 pair of Lululemons or UGG boots. I'm not paying that. So parents kind of do both. So today, I'm going to go ahead and do the lead and the thesis, but because it's May, and because it's the last class of the month, I'm only asking for 2 body paragraphs. Okay. So you're only responsible for 2 body paragraphs. Body 1, there are times when parents tell their kids to buy less expensive duplicate items or dupes, explaining they're just as good as popular brands. So what are things that your parents, most kids' parents, this is an expository essay in third person, really don't care about labels. And I think in Texas, winter coat is up there. We don't need $1,000 Canada Goose. We don't. We don't even need a North Face jacket. We don't need that quality of a jacket, a ski jacket, when we live in Texas. We have winter maybe 1-2 weeks of the year, right? We don't. So that might be something. Backpack. I know a lot of kids do the North Face backpack. A lot of kids are doing, there's a couple brands out there, and they're not too expensive, but there are some $300, $400, $500 backpacks. Somebody was telling me these little mini backpacks. Are you familiar with that trend? What are those called?
They're just like, I forgot what they're called, but lots of people like wear them.
And they're like little tiny things, right? What do you fit in that? I'm gonna look that up and see if I can find the picture of that, because my employee was telling me, I go, what? Okay. Tiny back, she called it something. Tiny backpack trend. Let me see if I can find out. I don't remember what it was called. Huh. There's a whole big thing of mini backpacks, though. Tiny backpack trend report. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I don't know what that is. Weird. Again, that would go in the other paragraph. So really anything like a lunchbox, a backpack, maybe wired headphones, a winter coat, any 3 items that most kids really don't care about brands or labels, right? What are the 3 things that most kids wouldn't care about? And you just name any 3. So for example, let's say we use number 1, name 1 item kids and teens purchase because they don't care if it has a name brand. Well, let's say it's a winter coat. You would explain why this doesn't need to be expensive or high quality. Well, we live in Texas. Texas is a pretty warm state. We don't even really have a fall or a spring. We have a long summer, right? We have maybe, fall, spring temperatures, and we have a little tiny winter. And so we really don't need an expensive winter coat where we live. I remember I lived in California for the first 8 years of my life. I didn't even own a winter coat. I didn't need it. We didn't. I was like, oh, I need a coat. We never had one. I didn't even know what a coat was. I mean, I had a sweater, a light jacket, but I didn't even know what a coat was. Some less expensive copycat products kids and teens do not mind buying. And this is your pajamas, your underwear, your socks. Body 2 is the opposite. This is where the top brands kids and teens today want. They want them because they believe this high price tag is better quality. So let's say tennis shoes. People are willing to invest a lot of money in tennis shoes. Okay, well, if you play sports, that's justified, right? You need to protect your feet. You need to make sure you have the right cushion on your feet. Let's say it's sports equipment. Let's say it's Apple, right? And Apple is like adults and kids. So that could probably be your number 1. When it comes to popular expensive brands, kids and teens refuse to compromise and are willing to pay big bucks for them. So kids today are no different from those of the past. Their peers and parents often influence them when it comes to purchasing well-known products, but access to technology and social media, I think, has really influenced your generation kind of in a negative way. You are so influenced by social media and the internet with these popular brands. You believe that you have to wear them and carry them around, especially when these influencers tell you that. But you have to remember, those influencers are paid. They are paid to tell you that. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good product. So here's the rule of thumb that experts say for kids and teens and adults. Invest money in expensive items they use most often. So this makes sense, doesn't it? Because you use it every day. Tennis shoes, technology. Other than that, a knockoff product is just fine. Interesting, right? So the KitchenAid for your mom, the purse, if she uses it every day, that fits the definition, doesn't it? All right, you're good to go. Have a wonderful vacation with your family. I'll see you when you get back.
Okay, bye, Miss Hansel.
Bye, sweetie.